on the morning of 9/11. I would be interested to know when you first knew we were under attack. Not when you first heard about it, but when did you know we were under attack, and what were your very first thoughts at that moment?
Well, I was in my office in the West Wing working with my speechwriter when my secretary called in to report that a plane had struck the World Trade Center in New York. We turned on the television, and this was after the first plane had gone in, but before anything else had happened. And immediate reaction was to think, how is this possible? This is a really weird accident. Perfectly clear weather. There was no way to account for it. And then as we watched, we saw the second plane hit. And that immediately, in my mind, triggered the notion that this had to be a terrorist attack. Couldn't have two airliners fly into the World Trade Center within minutes of each other and not have it be anything but a terrorist attack. Shortly after that, I talked with the president down in Florida, and we talked about a statement. He was getting ready to issue a statement, and that was whether or not it was proper to talk about terrorism within that context of that statement, and we both agreed it definitely was. And I believe the words he used was probably a terrorist attack on the United States. Within a relatively short period of time, people began to gather in my office. Secretary Rice, then the National Security Advisor, was there. Scooter Libby, my chief of staff. We probably had 7 or 8 people in the room. And then all of a sudden the door burst open, and my lead Secret Service agent came in and came over to the desk where I was sitting. And he said, "Sir, we have to leave immediately." Say, "I'd like to take you out," or "Please come with me." He said, "We have to leave immediately." Put one hand on the back of my belt and one hand on my shoulder, and literally propelled me out of my office. I didn't have the option of not going where he wanted me to go. And the cause for that, the reason he'd done that, is he explained to me as he was taking me down to the Presidential Emergency Operations Center under the White House, was that he'd received a report over the Secret Service radio net that there was a hijacked aircraft out at Dulles headed towards Crown at 500 miles an hour, Crown being the code word for the White House. And that turned out to be American 77, which of course came in and made a circle and then went into the Pentagon. At that point, I was down in part way to the PIOC. I hadn't gotten to the PIOC yet, part way to the PIOC, and I immediately used a telephone that was there to place another call to the president, and that was our second or third call that morning, and to let him know that Washington was under attack as well as New York. And the Secret Service had strongly recommended that he not come back. I also recommended that he not come back, believing that it was very important for us to stay apart so that we didn't become a riper target. And we didn't know at that stage what was happening.
He didn't like to hear that, did he?
He didn't like that at all, for understandable reasons, but he agreed to it. I think he saw the wisdom of it. You ask what our reaction that morning was, Steve. I went from that spot after I talked to the president, went into the PIOC itself, and there I was presented by Norm Mineta, who was our Secretary of Transportation and responsible for the FAA. Norm had a list of 6 aircraft that they believed had been hijacked at that point. Actually had the flight numbers on them. And of course it was only 4, but for a while we thought it was 6. And there were sort of 2 major drivers in terms of what I thought about that morning and as we worked through the crisis that day. Number 1 was we had to get all the planes down out of the sky so we could isolate whatever had been hijacked and account for all the aircraft, including the list we had of ones we thought had been hijacked. At that point, we'd account for 3 of them, 2 of them in New York and 1 at the Pentagon. And so that was a major part of the effort. And the other thing that was very important that I focused on was the continuity of government. some of you are probably familiar with, over the years, especially during the Cold War, we had developed programs and procedures for preserving the continuity of government in the event of an all-out global conflict with the Soviet Union. That was always the scenario, and we'd actually exercise that system on many occasions, and it focused on having ways, taking steps to ensure that somebody in the line of succession survived whatever kind of attack we were under, so that when the dust settled, we'd have a president and a government able to function. And that's what we referred to as continuity of government. That day it took the form basically of, one was to recommend the president and I not bunch up. That was very important for us to stay separated. But secondly was to get hold of Denny Hastert, of course, Speaker Hastert. He was out at Andrews Air Force Base where his security detail had relocated him, and we arranged for him to be moved from there to a secure, undisclosed location because he was next in line to the presidency. And if something happened to the president and to me, then Denny was in a position to be able to take over and function as president. But those were the two sort of major concerns that occupied most of our time. One was, as I say, getting all the airplanes down out of the sky, and the other was guaranteeing that there'd be somebody in the line of succession in a position to be able to take over.